Hello. Welcome back to Becoming Chiron, the key to unlocking healing and personal alchemy, with me, your hostess, Ursula Duffy. And today is Wednesday, January 4th. It's about 10:45 a.m. here in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And today we're going to start with, this is episode 4 of season 2, and we'll be going through this part of the season, Chiron through the houses of the natal chart. So today we will be talking about Chiron in the second house. And we will get into all of that material momentarily, as we always begin with our Astro Weather Check. I have kind of a lot to say about that, so let's talk about that. And I always try to mention this either in my post or in the email notification that I send out about this podcast. But in the very beginning, that music is a song called Space Cowboy by my dear friend and soul brother, Cassius Kirk of Kind Magma Music. So if you enjoy that little snippet, the full song, I believe, is up on his YouTube, and give him a like, a share, and a follow if you enjoy that interesting music that you hear in the beginning of the show. So let's get right into the Astro Weather Check. We are in the middle of Capricorn season at this point. The last time I recorded was just before the winter solstice a couple weeks ago. And we're in this Capricorn energy now. And we are almost to the middle of this Mercury retrograde that began last week on Thursday. And if you've been with me for a little while, if you've listened to any of my interviews, in particular, taken any of my classes called Reaping the Rewards of Retrograde, you'll know that I'm a firm believer and kind of changed my perspective of all of this in working with Mercury retrogrades and really tapping in and tuning into the magic of these times. As the retrogrades can be frustrating, I believe I've touched on this in another podcast episode in the summer. They can be very frustrating because Mercury rules over all of our communication. So that's verbal, nonverbal, digital, all of that. And how do we communicate now? Most of the times through our phones and our devices and our computers. So the tech glitches, especially in those things, can get very frustrating. Mercury also rules over travel and electronics in general, and contracts and friends and markets. So all of the things that Mercury messes with during these times can be frustrating because it really does kind of interfere with our day-to-day lives. But when you really make a concerted effort to tap in and to work with these things and discover what the lesson is and take the power in the pause as the gift, that's the gift that retrogrades give us, it really does unfold beautifully. So this Capricorn retrograde, like I said, began last week on Thursday. It's this year now we will have all Mercury retrogrades fully in the earth signs. So this Capricorn one kind of kicks it off. Capricorn is an earth sign, cardinal earth, which is the energy of new beginnings. And we're at this point now where the new Mercury cycle will begin on Saturday this week. I'm of the school of thought, and the way that I work with these and have discovered it kind of through working with the cycles and in my own life, that the cycle begins when the planet is at the same degree of the sun during the retrograde. So that will be on Saturday, like I said. And we're in this point now where we're kind of like burning off the last few days and themes of what came through and came up during the last retrograde period, which was what is in September, October. So think about what was happening during that time and think about what's been coming up now for review, for return to what was going on. All the RE words relate to retrogrades. So just give a little bit of thought as to what was going on during that time and kind of what might be wrapping up now. And then we'll have a new beginning. You can work with new planetary cycles, Mercury, Venus, all of them, like you would a new moon. So if you want to set some intentions, if you know where this is happening in your chart, that's a cool way to work with planetary cycles as well, is to just set some intentions for the next 3 months, the next Mercury cycle. Retrograde to retrograde, they kind of like pass the baton. It's like a relay. So what we were dealing with personally last retrograde is we had some car work done to try and fix several problems. And it was a very targeted approach. And unfortunately, one, I didn't avoid doing car work during a retrograde, which is something that you're not really supposed to do. But I always say, don't stop living your life. Just know something might come back up, and it certainly has. So it's not fixed. We're at the point where we're just done, and now we are looking at replacing the vehicle. So that's just something that's come up for me, retrograde to retrograde. Very interesting. And we spent the time between kind of still working on fixing the issues, and we're just kind of done at this point. So that's me. And then last week, another personal share. Capricorn is my 9th house, as I've mentioned on this podcast, and my midheaven is at 24 degrees of Capricorn. So midheaven is pretty much equivalent to like your work in the world, your soul's gift to the world. And 9th house is the space where we explore. It relates to teaching, to higher learning, to publishing, to higher education, connection to higher self, travel, foreign travel, things that are foreign. So it was cool because when I was planning my next event, in-person event, we had just kind of randomly picked that date. I knew the retrograde would start or would already be in retrograde at that point. And it just so happened that Mercury stationed, the retrograde began at 24 degrees of Capricorn. And that night I was teaching a class called Messages from Mercury. So just one of those cool synchronicities that happens when you start really tapping in and tuning in and seeing the gifts of the magician of Mercury. So I hope that you have been working with the retrograde in this way. I've been tapping into my dream space a lot too. It's been pretty cool. I had some really interesting dreams last night about some old friends, which can happen during retrogrades as well. Old friends come back into our lives, Mercury in particular. So it's just been really cool, and I've been enjoying it. And we have so many cool things on the horizon with Sea Goddess as well and teaching. I'm just really excited for it. So that's been really cool. So keep in mind, the new cycle begins on Saturday, and it's a great opportunity to start working with Mercury more, or like I said, set some intentions. It's really, really cool. Really cool work. So that's the Mercury retrograde. There's not too much else to really talk about besides the full moon that's coming on Friday. The only thing that I can note now that I didn't mention last time is Venus has switched signs. Venus is now in Aquarius. And I like to relate Venus and Aquarius to unconventional relationships. So I always just kind of pay attention to where Venus is passing through in my own chart, but not too much to note there for right now. Has anyone seen Venus? I have not yet seen Venus. Venus should be visible at this point just after sunset. We had what's called a moon gate with just after that new moon right after the solstice, the new moon in Capricorn. And it was so low in the sky, and I had trees blocking my view and I didn't see it. So moon gates are when Venus and the moon come together. And when Venus is in the evening sky, it's during the waxing crescent. And when Venus is in the morning sky, it's during the waning crescent. So Venus is now in the evening sky. I have not yet had the pleasure of getting a glimpse, but I've been trying. So I hope very soon that I get to actually see Venus and lay eyes on the planet once again. So the full moon that's coming on Friday, here on the East Coast, it'll be at 6:07 p.m. And full moons are oppositions between the sun and the moon. So the sun's in Capricorn, moon is in Cancer. The full moon will be in Cancer at 16 degrees. And the moon is at home in the sign of Cancer. The moon is the only planet that rules the sign of Cancer. And this is mostly a very lovely energy we have coming with this full moon. It is, if you don't know much about the signs, Cancer is a sign that relates to the mother and our maternal instincts, our emotional maturity and authenticity. It relates very much to how we protect the ones that we love and ourselves. Think of the crab and that hard body that it has. It's actually a weapon, but it's there to protect that ooey gooey, vulnerable parts of the crab that are on the inside. So the energy of the sign functions very much in that way. And the full moon will be kind of under that fullness of that Cancerian energy. You might feel like reconnecting with family or just kind of being home in your own space. Cancer is also related very much to how we show love, and a lot of times that's with food and nurture. And it also relates a lot to, like I said, that maternal sense, that feminine energy, but also mothering, how we mother ourselves, how we mother others. And full moons are times of release. And the only thing that I can say that might be a little challenging during this full moon is, surprise, it squares Chiron. So, as you know, we've been talking all things Chiron in this podcast. So, the Chiron's at 12 degrees of Aries, and the full moon will be at 16 degrees of Cancer, Capricorn. So, that's what we call a T square, because there's nothing really happening on the other cardinal sign, which is Libra. So whenever we have a T square energy, you can kind of like turn the valve and release the pressure. So if this is feeling a little gritty for you, or you're feeling a little bit of the tension in the square, a good release point would be doing something that relates to Libra energy, doing something artistic, or doing something that just brings you pleasure, harmony, grace, ease, balance. So just keep that in mind as we're moving into this. But in this release, in the energy that comes up during full moons, there could be some opportunity for healing that comes up during this time for you. As I say, it's always really important to know where it's happening in your chart. So wherever the Cancer house is for you, that's where the full moon will occur. So you'll know maybe some themes that might be coming up for you as well. So that is, and remember also, be careful with your words and your thoughts, as we're also still in Mars retrograde in Gemini. We still have a little over a week of that. So that is our Astro Weather Check. And let's get into our discussion about Chiron in the second house. So what I'll do is just riff on this a little bit from my own experience. And then I'll read the passage from Barbara Hand Clow's book about Chiron in the second. And then I'll read the description from the card. My Black Moon Astrology Card deck also has houses, and there's a nice description of the second house in that deck. So I'll read from that. I'll read from Barbara, and just wanted to do a couple personal shares. I know I have a very dear, close friend with Chiron in the second. As we talked about, Chiron relates to our healing journey, but also our sense of mastery. So the themes that will come up with Chiron in the second house relates to our possessions, our resources. So money comes under this house, personal finances come under this house, but also your belongings. So if you look around your space, think about if you were to move, what you'd be bringing with you. It relates to values in general, so how we value our finances, our possessions, that kind of thing, but also how we value ourselves. The second house, one of the lesser known themes, is self-worth, self-confidence. Those two things come up a lot in that space. So it's not just possessions. It's not just what we have and our finances. It's also us. And from at least one person I know with Chiron in the second that I know deeply and dearly, that's a big part of the healing journey for her. So I see that a lot come up with Chiron in the second in particular, but also just second house placements. I do not have any of the main planets myself in the second house space. So things will come up for me personally as I have transits to that house. So like right now, the Mars retrograde has been in Gemini, and Gemini is my second house. So there's been some interesting things going on there with the Mars retrograde happening. So by transit, we get to experience things when we don't have planets and houses natally. So let's get into Barbara. I have a bookmark here. So this is what Barbara says about Chiron in the second house. In the second 8th house polarity, or the second eighth house polarity, describes the life values of the client. The second house shows what is needed on the material plane to be comfortable and productive, and the eighth house shows what is most essential. The axis is very energized, grounding us into the earth with the energy of the second house, and then increasingly driving us to purify and deepen with the eighth house. Chiron in the second house signifies extreme interest and balance here, as the second house is ruled by Venus. Now, just a side note, that is in a natural chart with an Aries rising. Not everybody has a Venus ruled second house. So the way that I work with this, I look at someone's chart, and that's pretty much all that I look at. I don't look at the underlying themes of what it would be like if it was a natural chart, unless it is actually a natural chart. So I don't want anyone to feel confused by what she says in here. So let's continue. Richard Knoll, N-O-L-L-E, notes a strong proselytizing urge with second house Chiron, a desire to define values in general. Of course, then there is danger of belief that these values are the only correct ones. Astrologers must work especially hard with this position to help the client see that value systems are unique to the dynamic of each person. It is likely that natives with Chiron in the second house will be very sure of themselves and judgmental. And it is wise to show them that all aspects of their chart are unique to them. Astro drama would be great for such individuals because they could actually observe the energy dynamic of another person. They need to be encouraged to enhance their values because those values actually do involve the healing of others if they are given out. But judgmentalism and fundamentalism must be watched closely. Of the charts I selected, all but 2 clients are very opinionated, with a strong belief in the importance of what they have to teach. They know, so to speak. 2 are healers of elderly people with special interest in passing people to the other side. So she goes into her, like I talked about last time, she'll go into her research on what she used to write this book. I don't want to get too into that because there's no point of reference for anybody that's listening as I'm just reading this to you and not including everything else. Get the book if you want to dive deeper into the analysis that she goes into with each person. So she goes into a bit here, like the next part of the paragraph about the specific charts, but here's another general description. The key to the second house Chiron is to help the client better define their values. If they can, they will be energized by Pluto and find inexhaustible resources within. So I think that's really important. And then she goes on to say, Chiron in the second house is a potentially very beautiful giving position, for it often manifests as unself-conscious compassion for all beings. And that's beautiful, and that's what I've seen. And she also mentions that Carl Jung had Chiron in the second house, which I think is pretty interesting. And I like how she also pulls in the dynamic between the 2. So everything in astrology is a pair as far as working with the houses go, because you always have an opposite house. So 2 and 8 work as a pair. Oppositions create meaning and opportunities for balance. And as we've discussed before, every house kind of builds on the themes of the other. And the ones that are kind of on the top of the chart, 7 through 12, bring the work that we do in the houses that are on the bottom of the chart, 1 through 6, kind of out into the world and out into our relationships with other people. So that's very interesting. And I don't want to cause any confusion or anything, but I think it's important to touch on that dynamic, especially with natal placements and like we've talked about oppositions that people have natally. So that's Barbara's explanation of Chiron in the second house, which I love. And then let's get into more meanings of the second house with the Black Moon Astrology Oracle deck. So the second house card, I love the description of this. This is by Susan Shepard. She describes the second house as owning, which I think is pretty apt. The card number is 26, and I will read to you the description from this book for another perspective. The message on the card: wealth is the ability to truly experience life. And that's a quote by Henry David Thoreau. You will own it. The second house is about being grounded in the physical. It is the house of money and is about what you own and movable goods. And this is in a natural chart again. Ruled by the sign of Taurus, the second house is also about solid reality, creature comforts, lifestyle, and areas supported primarily in the physical realm. It is also the key to your power in the world, how you feel empowered and disempowered. The second house isn't always to do with money and possessions. It's about ownership of talents, maintaining comfortable shelter, living up to personal values and self-esteem. It is also about what we decide to utilize or manifest in the physical realm, the desired result of which will always be quantifiable rewards, comfort, and also familial happiness. When this card turns up, it's time to concentrate on more practical issues. How do you handle finances? How do you look out for yourself and yours in terms of shelter? How are you being rewarded? Are you making a good living at what you love? It's a time where you need to protect resources, to manage those things you own in a mature and equitable way. This card presents itself in a spread. When this card presents itself in a spread, it's about sowing seeds for a good harvest. It is time to build, accumulate, toil, and manage. You may be at a stage to take the beginning steps of opening your own business or embarking on a path that will not only enable you to realize your dreams, but could also make you a fortune in doing so. Meeting up with stubborn individuals or being unyielding yourself could also be an issue. It is important to stay the course, but also to be flexible when dealing with others, especially concerning goals or any financial matter. Music, especially the human voice, or issues concerning the voice box, may somehow figure in. Beauty, maintaining a good appearance, and having a sense of fashion at this time is also imperative. No matter what your question or focus, money, earnings, and material assets will play a part. Usually, this is an extremely positive card indicating significant financial rewards if you stay on your path and remain diligent and committed in all you do. Since the second house is ruled by Taurus, with patience, gradual advancement and solid achievement is on its way. The only warning is to be cautious about where finances are concerned. It's possible if you come into money, you may meet some unscrupulous people who will work to take it from you. However, do consider the other cards in this spread in relation to your question. The second house card can at times indicate stubbornness, slothfulness, and developments that come about slowly or seem to drag. You will not be able to rush things. In most instances, this card indicates an abundant harvest. No matter how fast or delayed it may be, it will arrive. Second house card in brief: money, how you make it and how you spend it, being able to afford what you need to progress and move forward, getting a raise, bills, coins, money orders, checks, credit cards, credit unions and banks, integrity, buying or owning land, building, carpentry, a cozy home, real estate in demand, old houses or businesses in an historical setting, the responsibility of owning things, career, extravagance, desires for luxury, objects of beauty and elegance, cosmetics, music and singing, ballet, the finer things in life, what you value, what you hope for, being stubborn or fixated, self-esteem, The colors brown, forest green, and yellow. The woods and wilderness, art objects fashioned from nature, culinary arts, overeating, dining out. Corresponding tarot card is the Two of Pentacles. And some key ideas: what is owned, spending, value, money, business affairs, the building of a home, laying down foundations, recognizing what is valuable. So that is the second house card from the Black Moon Astrology Oracle deck. Very cool. Just adds another layer of perspective there, especially if you have Chiron in the second house. Like I say during every episode at the end, I would love to hear from you. So we've covered Chiron in the first, which is my journey and everything I've shared up to this point, especially into the last episode. And now I present to you Chiron in the second. So next episode, we'll get into Chiron in the third. And then once we go through all the houses, then we'll go through and talk about Chiron through the signs, because that adds another layer and flavors the experience. So all these little pieces to the natal chart puzzle will come forward with Chiron. And just a couple things that I want to announce. We, Mandy and Lexi with Sea Goddess, have partnered up, and today at noon are starting a 7-week series called Shadow Twerk, which is brilliant and awesome. If you're interested, registration's right on our website. There's still time to join. You can even drop in. You can register for the whole series or do a drop-in class. It's every Wednesday at noon for the next 7 weeks starting today. So that's happening. Registrations on seagoddesshealingarts.com. And then next week, Mandy and I are teaming up and doing a self-love and care 101 workshop at Zen Landing Wellness and Yoga in Mays Landing. And that's an in-person event. Shadow Twerk is digital. So the registration is open for that on zenlandingyoga.com, and there's still some spots open, and it's going to be a beautiful evening of talking about what self-care and self-love means to us. We'll do some meditation, we'll do some energy healing, we'll do some EFT tapping, and we've done this workshop before and it was beautiful, and I'm very excited to do it again. So that's next week on the 12th at 7 p.m. Registration is on zenlandingyoga.com. And we have our next soul broadcast coming out hopefully next week. And we have a really cool and exciting topic to start the new calendar year for that one. And as always, I'm available for readings. I would love to work with you more in depth. I would love to hear from you, your thoughts on this episode. And like I said last time, Becoming Chiron is now available for subscription. So if you are able to do so and would like to throw me some bones every month, that would be great. I would greatly appreciate it. It will help me keep going in this project. And I think that's all that I have for today. So enjoy that full moon on Friday. Like I said, Friday evening at 6:07 p.m. The energy is kind of building up to it right now. If you're feeling tension, do something that brings you peace. And that's where I will leave it for today. Remember, as always, to be a maverick. Bye.